A new season is upon us, and it's a big one. And so I thought I'd get a big panel. And I'm not just talking about the number of guests. I weren't kidding. Top stuff there from the boy. How are we, Mike? Are we good?
We're getting smaller though. We're losing some of this. Maybe about 3 stone from now, you'll actually start to see some improvement in my face. But at this age, I don't know that that's even possible. So
it is. You got to believe. Just believe in the process. That's what you got to do, mate.
Trust the process.
Trust the process. That's all
I'm having trouble trusting these chocolate shakes I have to have in the morning. But anyway, it's worth it. I got a family, you know.
As soon as you start liquidizing your meals, you know you've gone too far. I think is the rule.
Especially when it's not even beer.
Oh, yes, true. Very true. A beer dinner is always appropriate. We're joined by your right-hand man. I say right-hand man like he's inferior to you.
Yeah, that doesn't sit well with him.
I'm good. I'm good. He makes me call him daddy, so I guess the right-hand man is the appropriate phrase.
That's an upgrade from what I usually call him.
Yeah. I'm good. How are you?
Yes, I'm very good, mate. Very, very good. It's nice to have a new season upon us, and I'm going to discuss all very shortly. And I mean, unfortunately, I had to fork out a good couple of grand to get him on, but Mr. Delay is here this evening. Lee Judges, how you doing, fella?
Well, thank you very much for having us on, Tom. And I've just checked my bank account and the money's not in there yet, so hurry up. That's all I'm saying.
It must be in transit. The pigeon is I swear, is an envelope. There's a pigeon. It's on your way, son. As the crow flies.
I don't know if
this is actually his
introduction.
This is his introduction from the last pod that you had. It's finally coming on now.
Yes,
this isn't from this pod.
No, not at all.
I feel honoured, you know what I mean? With these two, you know, they've been mixing with the stars today, haven't they? Like, you know, so we should feel honoured, like that. We
do what we can.
There's actually a word when you hobnob with ex-Arsenal players. It's called doing the judge. So
doing the judge. Doing the judge. I love that. I'll say that.
And it's not doing the judge like we normally mean it, but it's kind of a similar concept.
It's the dance you do when you get questioned when you think it's right. But it's actually not.
I just when the format come up and I see Mike and Andy, I thought, oh no, I'm in for a torrid time, like, you know. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we should mention the format. This isn't a usual podcast. We're full of more than just these 3 guests this evening. It's an hour and a half long, and I know you couldn't stare at Andy's face for more than 30 minutes, so don't worry. You won't have to. It's just so red. Whoa. It's just so red, Andy.
Why? It snowed here yesterday.
Unbelievable. I'm just going all out this evening with the insults. But yeah, I know how to treat my guests, right? That's how it works. But no, we've got fantastic guests on this evening. Of course, these boys are going to be with us until the 8:30 mark, and then we're joined by Oliver and French, and finally rounding off with Drew and Owen, and possibly John. He's doing lawyery stuff, so he's fingers crossed over his back. But it might just be Drew to end us on a somber note. But we'll get to that when we get there. But yeah, let's jump straight into things. The way I wanted to break this up was kind of go into defence, midfield, and attack, seeing as we've got 3 sections. So you boys have got the typically difficult Arsenal task of sorting out the defensive side of things. And I suppose the first place we should start is with goalkeeper. Mike, it's not anyone's guess at the moment who's going to be starting between the sticks come Fulham. We might not even have our goalkeeper in the sticks. He might be at another team by that point. But what are you kind of expecting to see?
Matt Macy.
Yep, that is possible at this stage.
It's either going to be, I don't know, Andy, did you just say this? But I think it might be Miguel Almunia that's going to be in goal.
No, I said El Mini.
Okay. El Mini.
Yeah,
definitely Miguel Almunia. Assuming he's healthy, which I think he is. Has he played? I've just not paid attention to this international break. Has he been playing for Germany, or is he just called up to the team?
He played 1 match.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think there's any question it's him. I mean, no one's talking about selling him. they are talking about potentially selling Emmy. So I wouldn't imagine they'll risk Emmy in this game. And we do have a very esteemed former goalkeeper on the panel. So, I won't take up too much time with my speculation, but I do think Emmy will be sold. I'll miss him. We've known for some time that he's had what it takes to be a Premier League starter, and I think he deserves to have that. So as long as we don't sell him for too little and then try to bring somebody in that's going to cost us almost as much, I think that's what ends up happening. But Leno's got the job back until he loses it.
Yeah, I think, which is really strange, because if you'd have said after the FA Cup final who's going to start their first Premier League game, I think 90% of people would turn around and going, yeah, this Martinez will carry on. Lee, I mean,
and I'd be comfortable if he did.
Issues. Yeah, of course. And Lee, there's kind of the thing with Martinez was that he gave that confidence to the backline. I think that kind of bled into them and their confidence improved. But there is another position in that backline that is still questionable, and that's at the right back slot. There was information came out today. We did a show on it earlier about Bellerin's agent saying it's likely that we could see him in a PSG shirt, which doesn't make any Bellerin fans sit too comfortably in their own shoes. But there's so many questions regarding whether Mainsley, as he's known for those that are new to the channel. I got so much abuse earlier on today for calling him Mainsley. All these comments going, his name is not Mainsley.
Do you see the comments right now? Do you see the comments right now about Manuel Amunia? I mean, obviously it's an inside joke. Yeah, I know it's Manuel.
It is an inside joke. It is an inside joke. Effectively, we did a quiz.
Don't get names wrong. That's all I'll say.
We did a quiz where Mike decided to come up with Miguel Almunia as his answer and somehow still got the point, which is ridiculous.
I corrected it half of a second later. I
Gareth Bale as well. But yeah, judges, right back position. Bellerin could be off the PSG, but if he does go, have you got the confidence in Mainsley to be kind of the guy to take us forward in that position now?
Well, definitely. Before you start, just don't get names wrong. It's simple as that. Do your own work. That's all I say on that. So, just one thing about Leno. I'll tell you what. I'll be very, very disappointed if Martinez is not in that team on Saturday, because Leno should be nowhere near that shirt. Nowhere near that shirt after the performances that he's put in. When you play as well as that. You've kept the shirt. You deserve the shirt. No one deserves just to walk.
So we're just gonna walk over the 2 seasons that Leno has kept us above.
It's about having the shirt and working for the shirt. And I'll tell you this now. I don't think and I'll tell you this now. It will not sit well with players, because you can turn around and say to a player, "Look, you can work and do what you want to do, play as well as you possibly can." But as soon as that player comes back from injury, you're out. And I don't think it sets well for lots of other things as well. I think Leno is a very, very good goalkeeper, but you have to wait your time. And Martinez has done nothing wrong in this in these games, and that's it.
Granted,
and at the end of the day,
but so you're telling me that when Mbappe was out injured for PSG and they had other people playing in his position, when push came to shove in the Champions League, who stepped in while injured to help them get through?
I can't believe Choupo-Moting didn't start the Champions League final.
I
totally get it right, but let me tell you a point. Let me tell you a point. Just look at them down the road. They went with a philosophy of you work hard, you keep your place in the team, you will stay in the team. Okay, right? And then when it comes to the Champions League final with Harry Kane, they took it down there. 4 months later, Pochettino was gone because all the players lost respect for him, because what he had told them week in, week out for 3 or 4 years, he took away after one player. Now, I'm not saying it's right or where it's wrong. Harry Kane is their top player. All I'm saying is that when Leno got injured against Brighton, I was absolutely gutted. I thought, that's it. We ain't going to win the cup. We ain't going to do this. Our season was fair. I was more gutted about losing Leno than losing to Brighton, right? But this man, Martinez, came in, and I have not even once turned around and said, you know what, we've missed Leno or whatever. This player has come in and done a magnificent job. He does not deserve to be dropped. And I'm not saying that he's not going to in the future. I'm saying that Leno's should not have no right to just walk straight back into that team. That's my opinion.
You don't think his wages are going to be doubled, maybe more than doubled as a result of that? I mean, there is a reward at the end of all of this, and in most sports, certainly over here, the concept is always, you don't lose your spot because you got hurt, especially when you were playing well before you got hurt. You should be given every opportunity to come back.
Listen, I understand exactly what you're saying. I get it. I get the point of what you're saying, but you've also got to say, if you're a player and I'm a player, what does that say? I could, if I'm a goal scorer, I come in. Harry Kane, for instance, got into the Tottenham side because Salgado got injured, and then banged in goals, and then look at that happening.
Well, that happens.
What I'm
that
saying
happens.
Yeah, but Lee,
what are you saying to your team?
With Leno.
What are you saying to your teammates if you?
Lee, think of all the keepers. No, hold on. You've said your part. Everyone in the comments is saying, "Oh, Lee's spot on," because you won't let anyone else talk. Think of Emi. All right, Emi Martinez has been with Arsenal for 10 seasons. Okay, Emi Martinez has not been able to take some really bad goalkeepers and break into this first team throughout those 10 years. Emi Martinez has been absolutely solid. Don't get me wrong, hell of a player, but he is not on the level of Leno. Leno has given us 2.5 quality seasons where he has really saved our asses a lot. Emi Martinez has had the benefit of walking into a team where Arteta has done a lot of work with this defense because everyone has improved in that back five scenario, including the keepers. So for me, Emi Martinez, whilst being great, if we can cash in on this player, then we have to, because we need the money. We're not in a situation where we can just sit and let him just ride the pine, and he's not going to want to. I made the comparison with PSG purely for the fact that you play your best player, which in my opinion is Bernd Leno. He has proven for us and for Germany what his trajectory as a player can be. Emi Martinez had enough shots at Arsenal. He has not been playing in front of fans where he's getting jeered. He's not playing in front of fans where when he makes a mistake, the Arsenal fans are on top of him. He's been in that scenario where it's been silent. And granted, he has been absolutely amazing. But we got to look at yeah, he has. But we got to look at the entire picture here. And for 10 years, he could not break in as number one. Just because he's had 3 months of good football.
I'll give you that. That is a fantastic point you've made, that he has played all of his games without the fans. I think that's a fantastic point. That is a great point that you've said, right? And so I take that on board. But I'm going to be honest. I think Leno's a fantastic goalkeeper. But in the games that I've watched Martinez, I just don't think he deserves to be dropped. That's my opinion. And when you look at he's come in, how many games it's been, he's not made one mistake. Not one mistake. I can name 3 or 4 that Leno's made, cost us a game against Chelsea. Blah, 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 blah.
Fair enough, but look at who's in front of him.
Well, hold on a minute. The back fours look better since Martinez has been there, you could say. I don't agree with that. I think because Arteta has worked on.
That correlates with Arteta's timing as well.
Yeah, the Chelsea game was like his second game on board.
And I think there's a correlation with both, to be honest. You look at how Leno has played. I think it's a fantastic point about the crowd. That genuinely has an impact, not just on the goalkeeper, but on the defence.
Fantastic point.
And the defence specifically are so mentally fragile.
For Andy, that's a fantastic point.
For the defence in itself, you look at how fragile mentally they are. Not having that added pressure of the jeers and the groans, etc. I think does have an impact.
100% agree. It's a great point.
The thing that I would say
is there any crowd on Saturday?
No, I don't think so. So let us know Martinez. But no, in terms of where we're coming from with Leno, is I think a lot of people have genuinely forgotten about him because how good of Martinez has been. And all of a sudden, the keeper that was, I think he was highest in terms of saves. I know that we had loads of shots being taken against us, but they still had to be saved. And Leno was arguably behind Aubameyang, our player of the season up until the point he got injured. And you can't just suddenly discount that. Now, what I think is the other side is I agree with Lee that you play your form players, but the issue is now is that we're facing a point where Martinez might not even be in the squad come Fulham, And I think the focus should be more on, if Martinez isn't in the team for Fulham because he's moved to Aston Villa, that we have full confidence in Leno to come into the sticks and be a top-class goalkeeper like we know he has been. And I think that's probably the point of view, rather than arguing about which one's better of which. It doesn't, because I don't think it really matters, because it's a great problem to have. But ultimately, one of them might not be there come that first game. And it's about having that confidence in Leno to then resume what he was doing before that horrible injury.
You know, to Tom, to the point, like if, you know, we're talking about Emi not making mistakes. Let's say he starts against Fulham this weekend and he gets nutmegged. Arsenal Twitterverse goes into meltdown, and now Leno is the god again, right? It takes one mistake from one of our players, and then all of the fans then shift to the next player, with it being Leno. Yeah, he's made mistakes, but ultimately, what we need to look at is we are not in a position to have these two amazing keepers at our club, and we have to cash in on one. And there's a higher upside with who's going to be Germany's number one, probably, versus Martinez, who, again, for 10 seasons could not break into this squad. Only when someone got injured did he get an opportunity to play. And that for me, that just speaks leaps and bounds.
We've known that Martinez was capable of this. We just haven't seen it over the course of a 38-game season. And, you know, if you can make him happy and honor his request of playing regular first, I mean, think of how many people have been average at Arsenal and then they're still playing in the Premier League. Fabianski and you know, before him, I think Manone, you know, first team place. Almunia had a first team place after he left. Manuel, not Miguel. And you know, so you want the guy to be able to do what he is capable of doing. And if he can't do it here, cash in on him. Instead, I mean, the moment he has a bad run of form for us, makes a couple mistakes like Leno has made over the course of a season, he's no longer a 20 million goalkeeper. He's a 2 million or a loan keeper if he wants first person action again. And you know, you got to strike while the iron is hot. I mean, I'd love to be able to keep both, but if you can't, it's got to be Leno for me.
Yeah.
Someone's asking him what
saves that he's made. Yes, he spilled a couple, and yes, he probably
when you're
cost us the
facing
game against
300
Olympia.
shots, you're going to make mistakes. But people are asking, in what world does Leno is he the number one choice for Germany? It's September of 2020, and in this universe, he was Germany's number one about 3 days ago. So that's where we're sitting.
Yeah, I think
that's the world we're in, man.
Make a point, Tom. The other side, which is Arsenal are desperate for money, right? There's not this. We can argue this all day long. Yeah, we can argue this all day long. I don't think there's a lot between the goalkeepers. You're going to ask me who's the best goalkeeper at the moment. I've been so impressed with Martinez, but there's an argument for Leno. If Arsenal were desperate for money, surely Leno's going to be worth more money, 40 million and all that. If we're desperate for money, let's cash on the one that's going to give us the most money.
Who's going to buy it?
You know what I mean? Like, well, I don't know.
You're talking you're talking about an international number one keeper.
Someone's going to buy him.
But okay, so then Lee, who in the Premier League right now needs a keeper of his quality? Chelsea. Would we sell him to Chelsea for 40? No.
And that's the thing, is that we talk about market value on the show all the time. And I'm sorry, Lee, the value of players for me is determined by the clubs and the value of the bids that are going in for those players. People were saying Martinez after these 12, 15 games or whatever it was worth 30 million quid, when I thought that's mental amounts of money. He might be in your mind be worth that in terms of pure raw value, but the only teams that are in for him are the likes of Aston Villa and some clubs from Spain like Getafe and Villarreal that can't afford anywhere near £30 million for a keeper that has effectively been the second or third choice for the most of his career. And so his value is dictated by the clubs that are going in for him, which at the moment is Aston Villa for around, what we're told, is about 15 million quid. And the thing with Leno is that I would love Martinez to be the number one keeper for Arsenal. It's romantic. He deserves it, all of that. I still think Leno is the better keeper overall. But as you said, Lee, we would probably get more money for him. The problem in that side of things is that I don't see anyone besides, as Andy said, Chelsea coming in for a Bernd Leno this season, especially after a not a medium-term injury. I'm conscious of the time, though, and I do want to run into the last 10 minutes with the Better and Niles. Lee, I'll come to you on this. as we go full circle, Maitland-Niles at right back. First England international cap the other day, which is fantastic for Mainsley. Really proud of the guy. But if Bellerin was to go, will you be confident in him to be Arsenal's first choice right wing back?
Absolutely. Again, a player that was during the lockdown and come to form. I think in all Arsenal's big performances in the FA Cup last season, Sheffield United, Manchester City, and the final, he was pivotal to the success of Arsenal Football Club. Again, Bellerin, I thought done really, really well as well. And so the fact is that we're going to sell. It looks like we're probably going to sell Bellerin because he's the most valuable one that we can sell. So it's not coming down to ability again. It's coming down to who we can sell, and who's more sellable. Because I can tell you that now, if it comes down to that, then Bellerin and Maitland-Niles stay, and we get rid of Cedric. But that ain't going to happen. You know what I mean? Because he's the first. But he's about a choice. You can't have a £30 million player, 35 million pound when we're desperate for cash, sitting on the bench all the time, and that's the problem we've got with the goalkeepers, and it's the problem that we're going to have with Bellerin or Maitland-Niles. One of them's not going to play because eventually Gabriel's going to come into the left side and Tierney's going to go to the wing back role. That is what's going to happen, and that then means that Ainsley Maitland-Niles is going to be left in limbo. An England international now, I think at the end of the day, by him just playing in that game, even though it was only 3 minutes, his value's gone up tenfold because he's now an England international. Whether you like it or whether you're not, he is. So I think that, I'm a big Hector Bellerin fan.
He's a 200 million pound player now.
Well, no, you know what I mean. I think he's going to come. I'm a big Hector Bellerin fan, but I think that for me, if we can get Partey and sell Hector Bellerin, I think that we need somebody like that more. So for me, it would be common sense. Do I want to see Bellerin go? In an ideal world, no. But I think that, as we're talking about funds, as we're talking about Martinez as well, say if it is Martinez we sell for 20 million, Bellerin for 30, say we've got 50 million to go and get Partey or somebody else. So I think that it's got to be done. And as much as I don't like it, you know what I mean, like somewhere along the line we might have to lose someone that I like in the team to get what we need in other areas. And I think that we've got to trust the process, and I'm willing to do that.
Mike, how much is Bellerin worth?
God, I remember one podcast, Andy, where I said he was worth at least 70 million pounds, but he was playing out of his mind at that point. I think that was right before he got hurt in the North London Derby a couple of years ago. Bellerin's one of those players that his value is tied to more than his performance. It's weird because, of the two, I think Mainsley is the better guy to have in the game or to have on your team if you have to choose between the two of them because of the versatility, because of the pace, the work rate, the lack of multiple injuries, slowing you down. But Bellerin is in that category that has a little bit of cachet because of his social media, his social justice causes and all that. And I could easily see him being a guy that goes to Paris, thrives in Paris, both on and off the pitch. And so for that, I mean, you wouldn't want to value him under 30. He's an asset that's probably worth more to sell to France, to Paris and France than he is for his actual play on the pitch. And so that's why I would choose now to do that. As much as he's a crucial member of our team and one of the longest serving members of the team and a potential future captain in many people's minds, I think, if you get 30, maybe 35 because it's PSG, you take that.
Yeah, and supposedly the PSG are interested in Bellerin. Guendouzi again now, which is an interesting one. But we'll save that for the midfield section.
Bite their hand off.
Yeah. Andy, give me your quick thoughts on Bellerin, but also as we round down towards the end of this first section of the show, Gabriel coming in is an exciting centre-back signing, in my opinion. Finally, we're seeing some investment being made in that centre-back area with Saliba obviously returning after his return loan to Saint-Etienne. Are you confident about a much more secure backline this season with those additions?
Yeah, so for Bellerin, I would say my value would be 35 to 40. And there were moments last season where I think it was Liverpool for me where Mainsley had the starting was in the starting lineup, and I just thought he's going to get eaten alive, and he just flew and just had everyone in his pocket. So if he is our starting right back this season, I'm more than happy. Just to quickly take a jib at Judges, because I need to do it. The last couple of matches Bellerin has played, he's played really well. So to your argument,
he froze his internet just in time.
We shouldn't be dropping players at the right time or the wrong time. I mean, but anyway, I don't. I think I've joked about it. I don't really watch. I don't really watch the French league, but a lot of people are super hype on Gabriel, and so. He seems like he's a unit, and I'm excited to see him in an Arsenal shirt. There's a lot of promise around this man. So
it's just that degenerative knee that you got to watch out for. I mean, we really, almost scuppered the whole deal, according to the Gerbil.
I don't know why I'm so red on this camera.
I didn't even pick up on it. I did genuinely. I think
I told you guys before you went live. I said, "Why am I so red?" And then Judges made me angry.
It just got worse.
Coursing through him, the anger is brilliant. As we round out to the last 5 minutes of the show, let's get your prediction in terms of next season. I am going to be that guy. I am ahead of any possible new transfers. I'm going to ask you of what you're expecting. If we can keep it about a minute and a half each, that'd be great. Judges, I'm going to start with you, mate. Where are we finishing in the league this season, and what are your ultimate predictions?
Well, hopefully we address the midfield issue, because at the moment our midfield got us to 8th place in the league. So if we can change that, get a couple of players in, the players that we've been mentioned, I honestly genuinely think that Arsenal will challenge for the title. Won't win it, but they're challenged for it and end up, getting top 4. If they carry, if it goes into without addressing the midfield, 6 is the best we can get next season. But I do believe that they're going to sort out this midfield. I think that there'll be a couple of casualties on the way. And I think that we're in for a very, very exciting season. If those 2 players that keep getting mentioned do sign for Arsenal, I think all of a sudden we've got a midfield that can challenge those teams. Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool and Chelsea. I'm not saying beat them, I'm saying challenge. And I think we could challenge for the title. Go into in about February, March time within a chance. But ultimately, there are better teams than us. But I do think that we can get top 4, definitely.
Wow, challenge is going to be
if we sign those 2 players.
Yes, of course. And I think it is very dependent on who happens to come in the window. Mike.
I'm just looking at the chat. Lee was answering the question posed to him. Have some respect, kid from Denver.
Who wrote that?
About right, no. About right.
Black Irish Texas, some time ago, I think. Oh, God, that's hilarious.
Unfortunately, if it's one of my members, I can't have a go at them.
There's a lot of people saying that.
Just say a quick thing about challenging. Yeah, Leicester challenged for the title last season for a little while and finished way down in 5th. You know what I mean? So I'm not getting my expectations high. Leicester were in that title challenge for at some point. I feel Arsenal could be in that same sort of ilk. I'm not going ahead and saying we're going to be winning. Challenging and winning the title are 2 different things, by the way.
It's wonderful to see some positivity coming, though. I share in that. I think this season is going to be one with so many changes. So the players are kind of used to playing in the environment now of COVID, but the travel is different than it normally would be. The game day experience is different. I know Andy's heard this before just about an hour ago, but I think that coaching and team unity and kind of the intangibles, if you want to call it that, of mentality and how the team is managed is going to be more important relative to talent than it normally would be. Not more important relative to talent, but more of a piece of how your team ends up in these games. I see us closing out some of these dropped points to Watford, to Brighton, to Palace that normally have been our biggest bugaboo in the last couple of years. And if you do that and maintain your ability to focus and get up for big games against top 6 opponents that we're learning how to do, I don't see how you don't end up in 3rd or 4th. So I'm predicting a return to the top 4. I don't think there's any chance of cracking the top 2. That's already set. And whether we're 3rd or 4th, I think comes down to how well Chelsea adjusts to all their new players, because that could take some time.
Yeah, I'd look at.
And that's all we've got time for, Tom.
True. No, at the moment, I mean, I should give people a glimpse behind the curtain, but we have obviously our TGT WhatsApp group. I sent in the voice note, and you never guess, but we've got some people who want to be late today. So,
plus, you need to go to me so I can go back at Lee Judges again.
Yeah, go for
now,
it.
Lee, I wasn't paying attention with what you said, so can you just refresh me on your projection?
Whatever it was, he's going to go against it.
No, I think, yeah. I think, as Lee said, because we do agree sometimes, don't we, Lee?
We do.
I would say that
we quite get on it, really.
We do actually get along really well. I agree with Lee. If we make the right moves towards the end of this window, I think that we will compete for top 4, and that's all I want. I just want us competing for these cups, and I want us competing I want us in the conversation.
That's all you want this season, you mean, right?
Yeah, this season. I want us in the conversation. I don't think we're that far away. 1 or 2 more pieces to the puzzle, and I think we're ready to go. Arteta has proved that we can do a lot with him as our manager, so we just got to have faith and
trust the process.
Trust the process.
Trust the process.
That's it. That's what it is. So, in terms of a league finish prediction, Andy, I want a number. I want a position.
I think we're going to finish 5th or 6th.
5th or 6th. Wow.
We're gonna finish reverse cowgirl.
Jesus.
That's the position.
Man, I'm getting some hella hate in this chat group because everyone fucking loves the old pensioner. You know?
You need to go on FTV a bit more. You need to get your profile.
I need to, yeah. Jesus.
Rattled. I love that one. He's rattled. Look at him. Look, he's rattled. You know what I mean?
And then there's someone in here, Colorado Gunner. Actually,
before everybody starts hating on Andy and trolling him and all that, we do get on. I don't want you, sitting down there and hating him. He is a nice guy, really. Just want you to know that.
They can hate on me all they want. I know the love between us, Lee.
It's like Lee. It's like Lee. You told me what your dad said once. If you're not taking the piss, then it means they don't care about you at all.
Yeah, so that's right.
We take it to the extreme because we care about you so much. We just never stop. We just never stop taking the piss.
I get bullied on here a few times, Tom.
Canton, remember the time we went and met up with Judges and he was too busy to talk to us because he had an interview with the BBC, so he left. We met him. You remember that?
Guys, just let me put my half pint down. I've got to go talk to the BBC.
Yeah, just finish my pie. I need to leave.
You should have seen that. He's never been the same to me, Andy. He's never been the same. When Lewis dropped him for the BBC.
When Lewis and Lee and Claude and I went to Sutton to watch Sutton against, I forget who it was that they were playing that time. I mean, you'd think that that God had walked into the Sutton clubhouse. I mean, all of a sudden Lee's in there. Everyone's buying him half pints. It was amazing. I mean, I felt like a fanboy at the time, but he's huge in non-league football. Because that's football he could play.
And I took it in my stride.
I'm rattled.
Hashtag rattled.
I do love that people think Lee is rattled me. It makes me smile. I do want to know who this Colorado Gunner is, though, in the chat group.
Well, he's been in all the chat groups lately. He gave like $900,000 in super chats to the same old the other podcast in America, but yeah, that one.
That new American one, which is very, very good apparently, and I've heard it's really, really good.
You don't even listen to your own show.
It's rattled a few Americans. That's all I'm saying.
But you talked about being rattled. Can we talk about being raffled for a second? If we're vamping for
raffled, just before we wrap up, just plug that very quickly, mate.
Okay.
Go on.
All kidding aside, we have an incredible charity going on right now. Gooners v Cancer, Leukemia Lymphoma Society. If you go to goonersvcancer.com, right here is the website. You can basically donate to charity, get virtual raffle tickets, put those tickets on some really, really amazing prizes, signed kits from Lee Dixon, from Alan Smith, from Lee Judges. I mean, you get so many cool things. Drinks with Perry Grove. So check it out. We appreciate your help, and thanks for letting me plug that, Tom.
No problem.
We'll try and do so. I'll have a chat with Kevin, and maybe we're sort of saying out where we can do a show together, or we meet up and have a drink with somebody or something like that. Do something like that.
You know what?
We do something like that.
Whatever it is, if there are people that are interested in it and are willing to donate to charity for it, we'll take it. I mean, the 2 shows we did with you to collect on your donation here were just epic. So maybe we'll post those on our Twitter.
I wouldn't do it like And as good as company I am, Kevin's better company. I can tell you that now.
That is true.
So
he's not lying.
So what do you mean that's true? You're supposed to go, it's not, you know.
We'll make sure the link for that is in the description, so you can make sure you click that link and you go and we're not going to talk about the FIFA tournament, it didn't exist. But the link for the charity is going to be in the description, so make sure you go check that one out. It's been a pleasure, boys. Thank you, Mike, Andy, and Lee. We'll see you again very soon.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed that, boys. See you later. Andy.
I'm about to text you and we'll continue our conversation.
Arsenal challenging for the first spot.
Yeah. Hola and French, how are we doing, my friends? Are we good?
Yeah, what's going on, boys? Glad to be back. Looking forward to the new season, man. I'm excited. Very excited.
Hola,
what's
mate.
happening,
You good, mate? That's a big... What is that on your face?
That's that quarantine beard, man. You know what I mean? We're going into the second stage of it right now. So, yeah, I ain't even trying to move it right now, man. And we're going into winter. You know, I need a little bit of fur looking after me this winter, man. Time to hibernate.
Unbelievable stuff, mate. Absolute pleasure to have you both here. French, I feel like it's, and to be fair, both of you, I feel like it's been so long since we've spoken because we haven't done a proper podcast, because the podcast usually runs during the season, and not being able to do them has been painful. But having you two back on is great. So for the next half an hour or so, we are going to move on to the next section with Andy, Lee, and Mike. We discuss the defence. So you two have got the unfortunate conundrum of the midfield to be discussing, which is a hell of a task, it's fair to say. French, I'm going to start with you, mate. Seeing as you have links to a certain player we are linked with, a certain Hassem Aouar. What are your thoughts around the midfield? Are you bored of these constant Partey and Aouar stuff? How are you coping? Are you getting therapy with this sort of thing, or what?
I was gonna even try my hardest to just not say their names when I came on the pod, because it's getting to the point where we know exactly who apparently we're targeting, who apparently we're talking to, and we know who we need. And I'm there every single post. Every time Arsenal release something, I'm there with the picture. I'm putting pressure on. I'm using my fan voice to let them know we need to sign midfielders and who exactly we need to sign, which of course is Partey and Aouar. At the moment, it's a bit of a black hole, isn't it? It's kind of we kind of just play avoid the midfield when we score goals. It's up the wings, switch the players as quick as we can through Lacazette, up the other wing. We're trying to not get the balls through the midfield if we can avoid it, because that's not where we have our talent right now. But I didn't realize that's what we're going to be discussing, so I appreciate that. I've got a lot to say on it, to be honest. But
we're going to cover it in detail. We are going to go into it. Ola, I mean, the Partey thing it's party time has felt like it's 5 minutes away 1 second, and then party is off, and then we have the possibility of a party rising again from the ashes of our ITKs, and it's incredibly frustrating. I suppose the really important question is, worst case scenario, Arsenal can't bring in either of Partey or Aouar because we can't bring in enough money from player sales, etc. Does our season for you hinge on one, or if not both, of these two signings being done?
The way it's looking, and the way Arsenal's been doing U-turns on so many of our players that's supposed to be going out, it looks like our season could be hinging on El Nene, because wait,
what a shout!
No. I mean, if you look at the way Arteta's turning people around, and I know this is unpopular, but I'm looking at the behavior and pattern of the club right now. And to me, it just feels like we might not solve this, and we know how important Partey is to what we're trying to do. It's so important. For me, out of the two players that you mentioned earlier on, he'd be the one to, that I feel we need to sign to just stabilize things in the middle of the park and let the offensive players that we have, and we got them in abundance. Let's be honest. For me, I just think that's the guy. I don't care about any other signings. Well, Aubameyang is another one, but to me, is Partey is the one that we really need. Well, I'm not sure what the step down from Partey and the alternative player that that we got in that position would be.
We just don't really know at the moment. If to be honest, I was saying the other day, and I wrote an article on it. I was like, if we can't get a Partey now, I'm not inclined to say waste 30 million on bringing in B-Tech Partey. I'm not interested in that. If you're not going to invest in a player of the quality to transform our midfield, is there really any point in doing that? I don't think there is. French, is that kind of where your head's at?
Yeah, I think it's a process. I think we part of the reason we're in this situation is because we've made rush decisions to try and fill gaps with players that aren't of the right quality, give them too much money, and then had a hard time moving them on. So I think with Arteta, like, we want to get things right because we've got Aubameyang maybe for 2 years again at peak performance, and we want to make sure that we support Arteta. But at the same time, like you said, I don't think we want to rush it. So I think it's very clear that our prime targets, certainly for that position, is Partey, and that we are looking at Aouar as well. And well, it really hinges on the sale of players, doesn't it? That's what it looks like. So we're maybe 20 million for Martinez, maybe 30 million for Torreira, maybe something for Lacazette. So there's all kinds of little deals we have to do to make it happen. And I mean, by all accounts, Aubameyang's already done. So I think they know we need to focus on that midfield. I think that's very clear. But I do agree with you that if we can't get the players of that kind of quality, the season does hinge on it. I think that means we're not challenging for top four. I think that means that's really what will make the difference for me is adding those two players. And then I think we are a good shout for top four. If we don't have them, I think, it'll be a good season if we finish fifth, sort of thing. So I think they know that's what the problem is, but I'd rather not get the B-Tech version, as you say, than just wait until next season, because it's a process. And the rebuild under Arteta, we know it's there, we know what to focus on. We just need to make sure it's not a rush decision and we get the wrong guy in again.
When I say B-Tech Partey, I'm not describing Diawara as necessarily a bad player. I know that he's not, and he's done really good for Roma. And actually, doing the tactical breakdown on him enlightened me to the fact that he is a really, really good player, the Guinea international. But the issue is when you compare the statistics between Diawara and Partey, the difference is just. You know how, the analogy I use is when car designers are trying to develop the new fastest car, the lengths they have to go to make those incremental differences to make it go, say, 5 miles an hour faster than the previous fastest car, because it's so difficult to do that. It's the same thing with this scenario. Even though Partey's stats are a percentage better than Diawara's are, it's that small incremental difference that really has the biggest impact on the team. And I just feel that is what we've got with a Partey-style signing. We should kind of highlight the signing in midfield we have made. It doesn't really feel like one, Ola, because he was here last season. Dani Ceballos has returned to us. And I think I said that at the start of the season. For me, a priority is getting him back, whether it's another loan, whether it's permanent, whether it's an option, whatever. It was imperative to me to have someone that had already transitioned into what Arteta is wanting. How happy are you about Ceballos returning?
I'm pleased with it. I think he came into his own later on in the season, especially after lockdown, and all those games that got played behind closed doors. I thought he really came into his own. He started to look at that player that I saw playing in the under 20. Is it the under 21 Spanish team that he was in? And he did really, really well in that squad there. So I can see why the manager wants him, because of his high intensity. That he put. He does work hard, and the problem is I don't think he's still that midfield general. Yeah, what he did for us towards the end of last season was really, really good, productive towards the end. And I know he had injuries along the way and a battle to get back into the midfield. But you know, going into this season, we need everybody firing on all cylinders, and I would love that bringing him back. If he fires right from the beginning of the season, and we get a consistent amount of performance from him. But on the whole, with the actual signing in itself, yeah, I'm pleased with it. There's a reason why Zidane tried to do a U-turn and tried to, maybe we're going to keep hold of you this season. But at the same, and that's because they recognize his quality. They've not given us the option to buy him. Again, they recognize what it could become maybe in another year under, the special coaching of what we can see Arteta doing at the moment. So for me, I think it's a great signing. The only reason why it feels underwhelming is because we're still looking at all these other big targets and nobody's really thinking about what we already got. We want that new shiny toy, but at the same time, something that's going to progress our midfield, where we're going to win it, where we're going to be looking to win a lot of battles this season.
Yeah, and it's so important because if, say, for whatever reason, one of our or maybe even both don't happen, had we have not signed Ceballos, as you said, El Neni would have been the guy. Like, we would have been looking towards the Egyptian to be an actual feature regularly in this midfield, which is, when you consider it, pretty insane. And you can't really go away from that because before we signed Ceballos, El Neni was playing in these pre-season fixtures. Like, Arteta was looking at him as a legitimate option, as just in case we weren't able to pull off these transfers. So, and that's not a slight on El Neni, because actually I think that he did quite well in those games in the Community Shield. He was quite good as well, and his passing was solid. And I think he's actually learned a lot, and maybe even bulked up a bit since moving to Turkey on loan as well. So, if arguably he's increased his value if we do end up moving him on. If not, he's a really good option for depth and playing him in the Europa League, etc. So I'm not actually...
The El Nene I saw in the Community Shield is El Nene on acid. I don't know what they gave that guy, but I'm telling you, the performance that I saw from him is as best as I've seen him in the Arsenal shirt. And again, the key word is consistency here. If he's showing that in training, that could be giving the people in charge food for thought and say, look, can this guy really do it? I know, look, I'm not advocating in the slightest, but I'm just trying to step into the shoes of the people that he trains in front of and what their thought process might be. And he's definitely gonna be in the conversation of at least last resort. That if we can't get our targets this summer, maybe this guy that we already own and we're paying his wages could be the guy to at least lend us a hand till January and see where we go from there.
It's just fingers crossed, really, whether or not these players can perform. It's fingers crossed whether we get the targets in. But there is one player that is a mainstay in Arteta's midfield, no matter what. He's the most polarising guy beyond Mesut Ozil at the club, and he's our Swiss general. Is Granit Xhaka. I feel I've done so many videos talking about Granit Xhaka recently. It's draining, but obviously it's really refreshing to get sort of other people's thoughts on this. So, if we were to sign French, Aouar and Partey, does Granit Xhaka still get into your team, or are you looking at us playing both of the Frenchman and the Ghanaian with a more creative style player? Because I look at Xhaka and Partey as a really solid industrial baseline to build up from our attacks from.
I think I just want to talk about Ceballos briefly as well. With Xhaka and Ceballos, I think they're both essential for the midfield going onwards. Both of them were our most important midfielders last season at different points in the season, I feel like. And Ceballos was the later half of the season, and Xhaka maybe when he came back after, and sort of had his comeback, which was fantastic. I think every fan loved to see that. But the reality is it's still the same midfield with which we finished 8th in. So for me, it was a minimum for Ceballos to come back. I think we needed him to come back to have like some semblance of continuity and some semblance of carrying on what Arteta's been building with this team. And I think Xhaka provides that same thing. He's, as you mentioned, an ever-present. He understands the system. And if you get some people around him who can work in tight spaces, you can see some more of what he's really good at. And I do agree. I think Partey and Xhaka, Torreira and Xhaka at one point was working quite well. And with Partey, you add another level of physicality, of athleticism that Xhaka won't have to then do. And I think we will see a different side of him like that. And I think, like I said, both of them, I believe, are important, but I also believe that they're the bare minimum that we need in our midfield. As you mentioned, otherwise, we're looking at El Neni. Torreira doesn't want to be here. Guendouzi might be coming back, you know. So it's these players who haven't really featured, who haven't been a part of what we've seen in terms of the fight back and the cup winning and the resilience. It's really come from Granit Xhaka and Ceballos as the two most important guys. So I think both of them are going to be very important. I think Xhaka will keep playing. I think if we were to get Partey and they would both play with Xhaka. I think that would be the three, and Ceballos would come in maybe for more, perhaps a side which needs a bit more creativity or something like that.
Rotation. I think we talk about this, and I think, and feel free to jump in and interrupt me like I just did you. But the Van der Beek signing for Man United frustrated a lot of journalists and media and a lot of Man United fans and rival fans, saying like, he's not going to play. They've got Bruno Fernandes, they've got Pogba, they've got McTominay and all these other players and things. And I looked at that and I was like, just because you've signed this player that you've got good players in that same position doesn't mean they're not going to play. It's about the depth and having flexibility.
Why do we sign Willian?
Exactly. We've got Pepe. We've got Nelson. We've got Saka. We've got
Martinelli. Exactly. But it makes sense to have this depth on the bench, this, a player that's experienced or a player that's proven in Europe or whatever it might be. I mean, Manchester United, I don't want to talk about them too much, but they are playing, obviously, in a Champions League. So a player like Donny van der Beek, who's proven himself in that sort of league, it just makes sense. So, yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a good point in terms of rotation with Ceballos and Xhaka and Partey now. It's not like all of a sudden Partey Xhaka is just going to be gone. We're not going to see him anymore. That's not going to be the case at all. I think it's going to be very important whatever happens. But again, as I said, it's with Ceballos, they're kind of the bare minimum that we need. You know, we do need that extra bit to take us on.
And just to add to a little point on what you just said there as well, we need to start. It's one thing that I've heard Arteta in quite a lot of press conferences talking about the gulf in quality between the first team and the defense, and the gulf in quality between the teams that we're trying to catch and where we are, and he's trying to build that bridge, you know, in quality, and whether the club backs him. He's already made it clear to everyone, this is what I need. This is the job that we have at hand. It's just whether they back him to do it or not. So far, so good. The window still has a long way to go, but things is just moving a little bit too slow for my liking at the moment.
You're muted, Tom.
You're mute.
Oh, I do it every show. I can't get through a show without doing it. It's just not possible. No, I want to get your thoughts on this. You say how it's like going slow, but every time I speak to people about this, I always want to bring up this point, which is effectively that to us it feels like it's slow. But do you think that's because we're so dialed in with social media, so keen to refresh, so keen for information, that actually, if this was 10 years ago, like the Ozil situation could have been going on for ages before we signed him, but back then, the ITKs weren't as ingrained in our minds as they are 10 years later, or 8 years later, whatever it is. Sure. And do you think that that's why it feels longer to us than it actually is?
I think that's definitely a huge part of it, because I think a lot of Arsenal fans are probably like me, like they spend a lot of time. You wake up in the morning, Arsenal transfer news, what's going on? So you're Googling it, you're refreshing the page, you're looking on Twitter, you're trying to see what the rumors are. And I know in myself that's a bit of self-torture, but you do it because it's part of the drama of being a football fan in the modern age, and it's a bit of it's kind of enjoyable as well, But I don't feel, for me, I'm slightly more patient with it for some reason. I've no idea why. I think it's just the manager. I've just got some faith in Arteta that I don't know if he would be so confident in, even taking the job if he didn't feel the board were going to support him over his time. So even if we don't get everyone we need in this window, I still believe that we are going to get the players that we need to push us on and get into that top four that we really want, whether or not it be this season or not. So for me, I'm kind of more. I know Aubameyang's pretty much reported now. I think that was probably one of the most important things. We got Willian, Gabriel, Ceballos come back, so we've made a fair few moves, and by all accounts, it's now just about moving players out. So there's a whole other month of the transfer window left. We move on a couple players, and like you said, then things could happen like that. All of a sudden things can happen overnight. And, remember with the Pepe deal, I mean, that came out of nowhere. All the ITKs had no idea about that. And within a week or so, we've got Pepe. So, I agree. Exactly. Even Ornstein, the Holy Grail. So there you go.
As he is known, yeah. There's kind of one big question, an elephant in the room, I suppose, or an afroed elephant in the room that we haven't talked about yet. And Vinny Eagle asked the question, what are the views on Guendouzi? Ola, the latest information today, and we touched on this when I was talking to judges and Andy and Mike about this, but the latest info we got is PSG's interest isn't just limited to Hector Bellerin, that there are links that supposedly they might be interested in taking Guendouzi with even, and brace yourselves because you're about to get a name from the past come up to bite you on the back.
God, yeah.
Julian Draxler has been linked to the possible player plus cash or player swap deal. What do we think about that name coming up?
Ah man, I'm sick of the Draxler link. But I wanted Draxler for like 4 years ago, and
Yanam Villa is going to be included in the deal as
well. I mean, these links, there's just certain players that's been linked to us forever. And I mean, this is the world of, transfer windows, and there are just some repeat offenders in the name. But as far as Guendouzi is concerned, look, it's attitude, in the Brighton game that really got him into hot water. I mean, he's had issues before with in previous clubs and maybe with the managers at the club as well. So is that previous issues? So we know he can be like that, but he's so young and he's one of these players where I think if we was to let him go, we need to be putting like a sell-on clause, maybe a buyback, some kind of clause in it, because I think that's one thing we've not been doing as a is what is one thing that we've not done that enough as a club, and with our negotiating team as well, where we're getting proceeds of some of the past players that we've let go. I mean, someone like Serge Gnabry right now, if he was to go, is upwards of 80 million, and there's no reason for all the time and effort and work that we put into the lad, albeit we sent him to Stoke. Yeah, I know, but look, I mean, was it Stoke or West Brom? It was under Pulis, wherever Pulis was. Yeah, West Brom. Yeah. So we sent him down there, and but for all the work that we've done on him, there's no reason why we shouldn't be getting something back. So if we was to sell Guendouzi as part of a deal, I want to see clauses putting into some of these deals that we're putting on players moving out, because that will benefit the club long term in terms of bringing in finances, because all we're trying to do right now is rebuilding our assets. And Arteta, coming back towards the late end of the season, has definitely done that and put just a little bit more millions on some of the really, really bad players that we've got, and it's made them look good with winning trophies as well. So obviously it's added a few millions to their value, and I think we need to be exploiting that at the moment.
What do you think about that tweet that he put out a couple of days ago, though, where he said, he 6 points from 2 games and back to work, Arsenal, red and white. What was your thoughts on that?
I mean, Arteta came out and said everybody has a clean slate from the beginning of the season, even with Ozil. So if everybody's got a clean slate before the first game of the season is being played, then I mean, Guendouzi is embracing the chance of that clean slate. So
yeah, I wonder if he's had a conversation behind the scenes, because we don't really see Guendouzi talking about. We haven't seen Guendouzi post about Arsenal in months, So for that to come out the blue, I wonder if it's either a conversation like we're going to pretend it's okay so we can sell you more easily, or is it actually like we've really had this look, when you're not able to move you on for the price that we want, you're going to stay here, so we might as well get it going. And I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if he came back and had a banging season for us, and all of a sudden, I mean, every other player's come back. Xhaka came back, Mustafi came back, Ainsley Maitland-Niles was out in the cold for a bit, he's come back, so a lot of players have had these comeback stories under Arteta, and it's not out of the question for Guendouzi to do it, is it?
No, absolutely not.
I would love that. I would just love it.
Is my mic okay? Because apparently someone in the chat said my mic's a bit odd. Is it fine? Are we good?
It was a bit choppy, but we're right now, yeah.
We're fine now. Okay, good. Predictions then, as we wrap up our second section of the evening. I asked the boys this question. I'm being that guy. I'm being mean. I want a prediction finish for the Premier League. And it doesn't, and you can't be like, well, it depends on who we sign. I want a predicted finish, please. Ola, I'm going to go to you first, mate.
God damn. I mean, Arsenal's done this to me so many times. It's crazy. I'll say 6. 6th place finish.
What if we sign Partey?
Oh, you just said it don't depend on who we sign, and now you're giving me a scenario of who, if we say, all right, even with Partey, I still think 6, but a good 6, because there's context to the season, isn't it? You know what I mean? So in a season where the top 6 is really competitive, everybody's beating everyone, and it's within a touching distance, maybe being in 6th place by 2 points or something, and it's been really competitive, then which is the type of season that I'm hoping for, and it will be something to build for Arteta. Don't forget, this is his first full season, and
of course,
getting into the Champions League is still a lot of pressure, and I don't want to hit that on him just yet, because I think there's something good that's going to come out of his tenure.
French.
So I think with the players we have right now, I think we'll have a good season, but I think with the players we have now, the good season will be 5th place. But I do want to make a second prediction here, that I think we will get one of the two. I think we will sign one of these 2 midfielders that we want. I don't think we'll get both of them. That would be incredible, but I think we might get Partey this season, and I think then we're in and about 4th. So I'll say I actually think we'll finish 4th, because I think we'll get Partey. But
nice.
I kind of evaded your
question.
enough.
Fair enough. I hope you're right. Cheers, boys. It's been an absolute pleasure to catch up once again. Listeners, you will see these boys a lot during the season, but it's been a pleasure, lads. Nice to speak to you again.
Yeah,
salute.
Pleasure, man. Looking forward to being back on.
Yeah, 100%. See you soon, boys.
Thank you.
Hello, you two. How are we doing, boys?
Well, what's the crack? I'm allowed to say what's the crack now because I've been on so many times.
That's fine.
There's no Irish now, I'm not speaking proper England no more, but he's just put up with
it. Drew, how are we doing, my bro?
Good. How are you?
Yes, I'm good. We should say before we go any further, John was going to be here, but lawyering has taken over. But it's fine because I've messaged him and I've got some thoughts from him. I'm going to read out for you guys in a bit, just so he has some airtime that he wants, which is fine. But effectively, boys, what I've done is we've had Mike, Andy, and Leon at the start. They talked about the defensive side of things. We then had French and Ola on, and we talked about the midfield. So no prizes for guessing what we're going to talk about in this final half an hour, and it's going to be that front line, which still is kind of up in the air as to what's going to happen with certain players. Some people are calling for Aubameyang to be playing through the middle. I'm not one of those people personally now. And Drew, there was an interesting thing that I went through the other day on the chat box, is that a year ago or so we were putting out shows and we were kind of talking about how Aubameyang's goals and effectiveness dropped whilst playing on the wing. And then we did a show, I think it was just me on another one, and there was a chat in the comment box saying that myself and you were saying how his goal output had dropped when playing out the wing, and maybe we should look to play him through the middle. And it was weird because things changed and opinions change. And where's your head at now with Aubameyang, out of interest?
It's kind of like you can't put too much emphasis on the position. It's the roles in your position. Oba, the reason why, so when Oba first went to Dortmund, he started out playing on the wing, and I think he got maybe 10 or 11 goals in the league that season. I honestly can't remember. It was that far back, but he got goals, but he was poor, and a lot of that had to do with simply the way Dortmund were playing. Dortmund require a lot from their wingers in terms of being direct and good on the ball, being able to provide regular service. It's not they didn't want goal scoring wingers. They needed more direct players, kind of like the Ousmane Dembele types, if you will, Marco Reus, that kind of player. So it didn't really suit Oba, and Dortmund almost sold him after the first year, because it just didn't pan out. And then they had injuries in the first team. He got his chance to the middle, and then kind of the rest is history. And the reason why he worked so well essentially for Dortmund is because it was a very simple task. It was get on the end of service. That's all he had to do. You had players, diagonals across the face of goal, playing direct, very free form, allowing his pace to get in behind. So it worked, and then he comes here, and the requirements and the positions are going to be different again. So the reason why Lacazette still keeps playing centrally, or someone like Nketiah still keeps playing centrally, and why Oba's been shifted out wide, it's because of Arteta's clearly he wants someone to be better on the ball, to drop deep, to come back and link midfield. But what that does is it pseudo gives Oba the same things he needs to shine just from the left rather than centrally. He still gets in behind. He still gets into space. He still gets on the end of service. So essentially, you've put what makes him shine centrally. You just shifted it to him just being on the left, and now he's making diagonals and on the end of service. It gives him space to maybe be a little bit creative himself. He can get space for himself just by, as we saw, kind of in the FA Cup final. The way he took his goal is a prime example where if you isolate him, all he needs is a half yard of space and he can get himself a chance. And that's kind of what you need. If he was playing in Lacazette's role, it wouldn't be as effective. So my analysis on Oba when we were first asked was what best suits him. And I was coming from a standpoint of he needs to be in a role where he needs to be limited. And if you're going to use a winger where his sole task is to get goals from the wing, then it's irrelevant if he's on the wing or centrally. So if you need a more expensive center forward, that's not going to be him. But if you can just, again, rely on his intelligence often on the ball and his predatory instincts in the final third, then playing him from the left-hand side is perfectly fine. And I think that's kind of all you really need. And, when you have a center forward that drops deep, it just gives him space to operate. And again, it's becoming highly effective. And it's, for me, I don't want him to go back centrally. I'd rather keep Lacazette and have Oba play how he's playing and where he's playing. I think that's the best balance we can have from a tactical standpoint. And also, I don't think Nketiah is ready to lead the line for Arsenal at all. And I don't think we should be in the market to try to bring in the center forward just because of that. So.
Yeah, I know. I kind of want to go on to Nketiah in a bit, but it is a valid point about him. There's a lot of questions regarding Eddie. But sticking with Aubameyang, Owen, just briefly, the recent information we have is that there is a 250 grand a week contract that has supposedly been signed, and there's an announcement in a matter of days, it seems. If we sign Partey, if we sign Aouar, we've signed Gabriel, all of these ifs and buts and what we have done, is Aubameyang's new contract the most important piece of business we do this summer?
Yeah, undoubtedly. When you simply look at the cost it would take to replace his goal output, you're talking close to the 100 million mark, easy in today's game for a replacement for him. So the finance just makes sense. Just to look, whatever his wages are, 250, 300k with 300k a week I think would still be worth it. He shows no sign of slowing down at all. At the minute, there has been no drop off at all in recent years. So yeah, definitely he's probably our most important bit of business. I would say I actually I disagree with the two of you in terms of putting Abba back centrally. I think a lot of assumptions are being made around Arteta's system before we even really know what it is. I think that a Partey or an Aouar coming in completely changes everything. I really think that what we are seeing now is a diluted down version of what Arteta wants to play, because that sort of, my problem with this is without that attacking, creative attacking midfielder within our side, I want to see us move to a 4-3-3, because I don't see the 3-4-3 sustainable for a full season. It's fine, look, when you're going up against Liverpool or Man City and you need to be sort of rigid and hard to break down, but what about when you come up against a Burnley who aren't so quick to come? It's just very, I just don't think there's a lot of creativity comes from there. And with it, look, I'm going to say this as well, and Eoin Taddington, I know you're going to kill me for saying this here, but
Eoin's always on everyone's back.
I'm pretty certain that we will get Partey, for the simple reason that it's so public that he is our number one priority target, that who is that we've been after him for so long. And Vinay Edu and Arteta have really got to sort of step up. No, I'm not.
I saw that.
No, that Vinny, Edu, and Arteta really have to be seen to start, making some changes within this side, and I think that it would almost be admitting defeat if we didn't secure him this season. And let's face it, he really isn't. For that price, you're not going to get that standard of a midfielder for that price, that transformative figure. And I was saying this in the chat with Drew and John before we come on, that whether people like it or not, I could see Ozil coming back into the side this season if we sign Partey. I, much like Xhaka, think that Mesut Ozil is a player that needs complemented by the players behind him. He needs that structural integrity behind him so that he is free to do his role. He has never been a person to chase back, win the ball back, and like I say, same with Xhaka. We're labeling this player as something that he has never been, and expecting them to do something that they have never done. So in terms of the striking options, I see that if we do take a Partey and maybe Lacazette moving on and Aubameyang going centrally, and let's not, as you said previously, Drew, that this is a man that has made his reputation playing centrally. So I really don't see, the issue with moving him back there if the circumstances are right, of course.
Yeah, but I'm answering this based off of the current scenario. Depending on what happens, my opinion is going to change. Yeah. Because I've seen what he does centrally, because I've seen when he has creativity behind him and a structure in place that allows him the ability to be free forward and not have to have a role that Lacazette has taken on, then I don't mind him playing centrally. That's the thing. So I'm just looking at it irrespective of what we have currently on the books.
Yeah.
What we're looking like at tactically. If we go to a 4-3-3, and if we do have that creative player a bit more central, whether it be Mesut Ozil or whether it be, say Aouar, depending if he comes in, it could be Willian. We don't know, because we do have Willian on the books. People forget that Willian can in fact play.
That could even impact even in the current system. I think that if you have, look, obviously Saka can provide, but to the level and consistency that a player like Willian can from even left wing with Pepe, both of them tend to be more provide more so than score goals.
How creative Willian is. Like you look at the number chances created, and Drew, you were alluding to that. Him centrally is something that I'm genuinely intrigued to see how that plays out. And the 4-3-3, I think, is the key. Is that if you have 4-3-3, there is more of a scope to put Aubameyang centrally, in my opinion, if you've got that creative force. But if we're all being honest, I can't see us being a back four against Fulham in the first game or for the first couple of games, because I just don't feel the team's had enough time to adjust to the back four. And Arteta knows the back five works at the moment. It's worked for us. It's won us a trophy. And to get away from that's quite hard. Go on.
Not for nothing, though, because David Luiz is injured, you could also see a back four.
Yeah, true. I mean, it's very nice.
Yeah, it depends if you're going to want to throw. And not for nothing, and there's no disrespect to Fulham on any level, because I do think that they're a club that can surprise you given the kind of players that they have in certain positions. But opening match of the league season against a newly promoted side, you could almost make the case that that's the perfect time to try Gabriel and Saliba as a central partnership. Only if I think you would need Emi Martinez in goal to do that, because I think he organizes the back better than Brent Leno does. So I think there's going to be a lot of questions going to be answered. If depending who the starting keeper is, depends on who the center back pairing or the three is going to be. There's a lot of things that we just don't know. But I wouldn't be shocked if we actually tried to make a statement on match day one and go with something like a 4-3-3 and go out and actually try to throw a bit of a gauntlet out there. And because we have Willian on the books, don't be surprised if maybe he starts, or maybe Mesut Ozil could also play. He's been playing in friendlies. He's in training. Don't be shocked if he has a role, or at minimum is on the bench or one of the first off the bench, depending on what we have. So.
See back to just to pop into my head before I forget. I've taken too many punches in the head in my life to wait to say stuff.
And to find out more about that, you should read Owen's biography on the TGT
website. Great plug. No, I was just going to say with that. Look, it's, as you say, it's a lot of if and but. If we move to a 4-3-3, I don't think that we see the level of output from Aubameyang on the left-hand side, simply because within the 3-4-3, I think that much of his output is that he moves to playing almost as a second striker, making that diagonal run between the wing-back and the centre-back. That's where he shines, but that's solely down to either Saka or Tierney or Maitland-Niles, whoever's playing that wing-back role. at that time overlapping him and forcing him centrally.
And
You know,
Laka dropping in as well.
Exactly. So I think that there's a lot of ifs and buts about this here, but the one reason I see this going is because look whether it's ITKs or whoever, we're starting to see some rumors coming out that Laka has been talking to the likes of Leon and stuff, you know. So I think that maybe the player is actually starting to maybe realize that his days are possibly numbered.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because I hadn't considered the Leon side of things. Depay looks to be off to Barcelona. That looks to be a done deal. They've got Moussa Dembele, which if you speak to Jeremy Smith, will tell you that he was one of the players that Leon were open to moving on, Moussa Dembele. They then got Akambi there as well, obviously joined from Villarreal, was player of the month in La Liga, has joined, hasn't really hit the ground massively running, but he's a solid forward. And then if you look at what they'll get for an Aouar, and they need money like us to reinvest, they're not flush with cash by any means at this point, Leon. And Lacazette returning does make a lot of sense. And a possible deal in my mind is forming. I don't know if it's realistic, but...
Yeah, but Alas came out and said the wages are it's not acceptable. He's on 200K plus a week. Leon can afford that. They never play players that much money. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And he's beloved at the club, and obviously you could say redemption tour for him and Leon would make a lot of sense. But they don't have Champions League. They can't afford his wages. I don't see it. I think he's here next season, or it's going to be something we don't expect. Juve just essentially confirmed Suarez, so that deal won't be happening either. So I think it's Atletico Madrid or bust, or we have Lacazette. I want to keep him. I don't see the need to move him on, because if you move him on, and I think we would have to reinvest the money elsewhere first rather than a replacement center forward, we're left with Aubameyang and Nketiah all season long. John Jules has gone out on loan. Balogun's future is, seemingly away from the club. So I think you almost have to keep him.
Yeah, and let's talk about Nketiah in a second. Just before I do that, I want to highlight John's comment, because John couldn't be here this evening, unfortunately. Make sure you give him a follow on Twitter at 305cars. He will be back next week when we return with our usual TGT Writers Pod, which you can check out each week, and the boys give their latest info on the latest pieces, and we talk about the latest Arsenal news. It's a really good show. You should check it out. But John says we actually have a lot of flexibility there in the upfront position. More so than is obvious. Saka and Willian can play on either wing if necessary. I'm pretty confident Martinelli could as well. Aubameyang, we know, can play on the left, though I wouldn't be surprised to see him centrally, which is interesting as to what we've just been talking about. If we don't lose Laka, we have that option centrally, as well as Martinelli and Eddie, who can also play centrally. And it's kind of that idea of just adding Willian into the mix suddenly gives you loads of depth and versatility and options. And again, I brought up the Van der Beek example when we were talking about the midfield, that even though we'd signed Sabas and we could effectively sign Partey and our fingers crossed, that having all these options, and just by signing a player that is in a position that is Pepe's, basically, he has played right wing most of the time for Chelsea, but we've already got Pepe there. But the fact you've signed someone to add depth that's versatile gives you that flexibility against different oppositions. And I'm not expecting us to be playing the same lineup week in, week out under Arteta. One, it's not manageable. Two, it's not tactically correct, because you need to play different lineups against different lineups in the opposition are putting out. So it's interesting to see how much flexibility we do have. But the player I do want to focus on a second, Owen, is Nketiah. He looks to have the faith of the coach. Arteta, I think, likes him a lot. I have questions about him in the long term. I have less questions about him than I do following Balogun, but that's a different story. But Nketiah, for you, do you see him getting enough minutes this season to convince that he could be Arsenal's long-term centre-forward option?
I can see him getting the minutes, but I'm not sure that that's the right thing to do with him at the minute. Within a lot of displays, that I would be opting maybe like a sort of higher tier championship side, But I just think that, I just think that he gets. You can almost see him getting visibly frustrated within the games. I'm not sure whether it's a stature thing, which look. Going by the games I've watched him play in recent time, the friendlies and stuff, it looks like he has been working on that, the hold-up play side of things. Again, that his role could completely change within Commons or changing systems, so it's sort of maybe hard to judge him on what we're playing at the minute with the 3-4-3, because we're asking again him to do something maybe that isn't his natural game. But to be honest with you, I look with the players we have at the minute. I would actually prefer to see Martinelli getting minutes centrally. I think that in the games we've seen him play there within the Europa League, I actually think that that's where he does his best work at times. He just seems more naturally fitting, a bit more combative. His technique's just much more crisp. So I would prefer to maybe see the likes of Martinelli getting a run centrally than Nketiah. I just don't think much to the same as Joe Willock and Reece Nelson. I think maybe because of the dire situation that we're in, we had no other option. But really, I think that we've sort of thrust these boys into the furnace a bit too quick and expected a bit too much of them too early. So yeah, I would be sort of opting to maybe loan them three out, depending obviously on incomings, because we keep using this word depth. And I think it was last week's podcast, Drew, you were saying about, a deal like Partey is a lot of money to go on one player, and that we could even opt to sort of spread that money out and add a bit of depth to the squad. But I think the word depth is okay, but when you're sort of consistently bad with all your lineups and you're not picking up points, depth isn't really worth much. Eventually, you sort of have to start adding quality. And what I would say is, when I think back to the early to mid 2000s, what I really considered probably to be the best time in the Premier League, you could almost name every single week the majority of top teams starting 11 every week. There'd be minimal changes all the time, and I think that what we need to do is sort of start to nail down. Consistency breeds success. You have to give stuff time to sort of settle. But yeah, sorry, I rambled on to something completely different there. But
no, you're on the right show for that. Mate.
Oh yeah, I'm a rambler.
Drew, let's get your thoughts on Nketiah. You have been busting a gut to get them out there. I think that he's someone that has the potential. I struggle with the stature of him in the Premier League. I don't know what it is. It's just something about him that I don't. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't get that Premier League stature feeling from him. And I feel like I should be by the stage of his development that he's at now. Is that a fair assumption, or am I being too hard?
Maybe a bit of both. Because when you look at someone like Gabriel Jesus, he doesn't really have a Premier League statue either. Sergio Aguero doesn't really either, and certainly not when he came to City. But you could argue that over time he's formed himself into having that, even though he can't grow height-wise. He's certainly put on muscle weight so that he can withstand the physical nature of the Premier League. Because in his first season, he still bangs goals, but he was getting knocked around, and now he's pulling people off the ball despite his lower frame. So for Nketiah, you could maybe make the argument that he needs to work on maybe some of his physical attributes a bit more. I think there's a lot to like about him as a player. I just feel like, as usual with a lot of our young players, I think those positive qualities are overstated a lot of the time. I think that's where we kind of have to strike the balance between it. I think you can look at other examples of other younger players in that position in world football who are better than him, but don't get the hype from their fan bases that Nketiah does. So I think, like most things, we just have to find a balance and manage it. But I do think that maybe he'll have a bit of pressure on this season. Again, if John Jules goes out on loan, which he has, and smashes it, you have to think that he's going to be in the conversation to maybe break into the first team full time next season. So Nketiah has to show something, and then theoretically, what if we sell Lacazette out of the summer or next summer? So then he's going to be in the 1v1 direct competition with John Jules for time in the first team. So I don't know. I kind of feel like, can I see him making it in the Premier League as a first choice number 9? Yes. Do I think it's going to be at Arsenal? I'm not necessarily convinced yet. Nor do I think we should force that narrative. I don't think you should be doing things like benching Aubameyang and Lacazette just so you hope that Nketiah works out. I don't think we're in that kind of position. I think if we're in a different level of expectations that Arteta has for the club, you might see it. But he's come out and said he wants to win Champions League while Willian is at the club. So we have a 3-year window to win Champions League in his mind. And if you're pushing for Champions League, you want to push for the league or at least finishing in second or third. And again, I don't see a player in Nketiah currently that is a player that can lead your line and get you to that success. And I even I've written about that before, where if I rate a lot of our young players, but they're not young players that are of the level that can really push you forward. They're not someone like an Erling Haaland who, is look at what he's doing for Dortmund, the way he did for Salzburg, what he's doing for Norway. He's a player who's young, but is beyond his years, physical terms. So he can impose himself on matches, and he has the quality to go along with it. And Nketiah is just not there on any level. So time's going to have to tell. I don't think it's going to be this year. I don't think it'll even be next year, because where is he going to play? How is he going to get the minutes that he really needs? And I think this is kind of maybe what Eoin was alluding to, where he's not getting the opportunity to go out and really, truly develop right now. And
the reason, sorry, Drew, go on.
No, go on. No.
The reason that I don't think Nketiah makes it, for me, is that I can't see really Lacazette staying beyond maybe 2 seasons max. Yeah. And if he does go, I don't see Arsenal looking at Nketiah, even in 2 years' time, and thinking, yeah, he is the guy that is going to lead our front line, which will mean that any money that's made from Laka or any money that's available will need to be reinvested into bringing in a centre forward. And
I agree with
whoever they bring in is going to be ahead of Eddie Nketiah in the pecking order. So no matter what I think about Nketiah in long term, whatever people think about his quality, the problem is for him is I can't see Arsenal not bringing in someone else after Lacazette goes. And if Lacazette doesn't go, Nketiah doesn't go in ahead of him yet, for me. I know a lot of people have issues with Lacazette and his consistency and how his form has dropped in the last season, but still, it's a big asset on a big wage not to be kind of playing when, and it's very, very different to the Ozil situation. So I wouldn't use that in comparison. So I just feel that Eddie's in that situation where he's not going to get that rub of the green. Does that, Owen, do you kind of fall along that line, or?
Yeah, I actually, look, I don't want to sound as if I'm constantly bashing these kids, because that's not what
it's about.
I want get them. No, it isn't that. It's Steven Gerrard said something, and it has always stuck with me. He says nowadays.
Oh, how was he at the pub when you went to see him? By the way, was it good?
Oh, you see, no, I had to knock him out, man. He was mouthing off. No, he said something that sort of stuck with me, and he says nowadays younger kids make their debut and they instantly feel like they've made it. They think they're a Premier League football. He says, whereas years ago when he was starting out, that you were made very aware that this is just the beginning. You have to earn your way up, and you have to stay at that level consistently to stay in the team. And I know this is maybe slightly presumptuous of me, but that's the feeling I get with the 3 that I always mention, with Willock, with Eddie, and with Nelson. It seems to me that they just have a bit of an arrogance about them that they maybe shouldn't at this stage, in comparison to maybe the likes of Saka and Martinelli, who seem to be extremely hungry. And do you want to know what? Much to my surprise, even I would mention Mainsley. I was going to blaspheme again. Even he, I think he would have been in that bracket that I'm holding them through him, but he's worked his way out of that, and now he seems to have that bit between his teeth. And that's just the issue I have with them. I think that they've got all the ability in the world to make something of themselves, but it's just about keeping that hunger there. And I think maybe with the introduction of a few more experienced players and their playing time being slightly more limited, that it could actually help them.
Drew, did you sort of want to finish off that point?
I mean, it's hard for me to sit here and criticize maybe Eddie's mentality. I mean, I don't know. I've never had a conversation with him. I've never sat down with him. I've never been in the same room with him. I don't know. I can only kind of tell you or make comparisons of other players of that same age bracket. And you kind of see the evidence on the pitch that they're willing to work. And and I said this before, and I know it might be easier in some other countries, even though it's Spain and Germany, but for a player of Eddie's age, the way our fan base talks about him, you would assume that he made his debut at 16 and a half years old and he scored 10 goals in his first season. And I think for me, I think we have to taper our expectations for him. And I think also we have to be okay with the fact that he just might not be as good as we think. And I think, and I've said this numerous times, that I do think, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with this, there is such a connection and desire for our fan base to want to see local players come through the ranks and make it at the club. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. But I do think in that desire, you have to also measure yourself. And I think that's where we kind of struggle. I think I just kind of feel like the jury for me is still out on Nketiah. I think this season will tell a lot. If we see the work he puts in and we regularly keep seeing him being selected over Lacazette in the starting 11, then you at least know that he's working to win over the favor of the manager. But then all that work has to have some sort of end product. You can't keep winning minutes and then doing nothing with those minutes. That's the dividing line. If you get your chances when you're young, you have to take them. And that's what separates players like Haaland or like Kai Havertz or Timo Werner when he broke through. Players that are now, 21 and up, and now they're getting big moves to gigantic football clubs, and they've now given you the proof of the pudding. And Nketiah hasn't done that yet. And I'm not saying that he should be compared to those players. It's just a matter of when they took their chances, or when any good young player takes their chances, there's two pathways. Either you make it and you keep progressing after your debut, or you're still having debates 3 years later about if they're good or not. No one had debates about Timo Werner or Kai Havertz when after they made their debut. It wasn't a debate. It was what level are they going to get to? Will they be world class or not? With Nketiah, it's even if he's going to be good enough to be a backup at Arsenal Football Club, let alone is he going to be good enough to be a starter? So yeah, I don't know. I just kind of feel like there's a lot of questions around a lot of players this season, and a lot of them are the younger players. And it's funny you brought up Reece Nelson. We're talking about the front three. Reece Nelson is another one I feel like we might have to detach ourselves from, because I don't think he's really done enough to give us a reason to keep him at the club, especially when you have someone like Nicola Pepe at the club already. Reece Nelson's time might be up. We might have to view him as one of those young players that you produce and then you move on for a fee, which is completely normal. So, but again,
as well.
It is. But again, the good thing about this is we're having a debate about what we're doing with the depth in the forward line that we do have. We couldn't do that like 2 years ago. So that's the plus side, and that's kind of a good debate to have. And while some of it might end up in frustration from some sections of the fan base, it's a good thing. No, it's fine. Go on.
Let's get your sort of predictions then as we wrap up, conscious of time. I've asked the boys, I've been unfair, I've been a right idiot to them. I'm an unfair guy. I'm going to do the same to you guys. No, it's not based on who we sign, and you can't be like, oh, it depends on what player comes in. I want a Premier League position finish prediction from both of you. Owen, as you look the happiest, I'm going to ask you. Going first, mate.
Jeez, that's not much of a competition between us two, is it? First, we're going to win the league, boys. We're going to win the league. Nah. Fourth, I think that we'll just. I think that we'll just top Chelsea. I think it's going to take their signings a little time to settle in. I know this doesn't relate to us, but I actually see Liverpool maybe finishing third. I don't see that. The drop off that they had towards the drop off they had towards the end of the season, and I just you seen it with even our invincible side. You can't keep that constant pace up all the time. Yeah, but fourth for us, back into our normal comfy little spot that we used to love so much.
Yeah, it's nice, but it would be nice to be back there, wouldn't it? Be cozy. Drew, predicted league finish.
I almost just want to say fifth. I think we'll be in and around fourth. I think we'll just miss out, and I do feel like this is still going to be a tough season because it's been made clear that Arteta does, just by the manner of which he manages, the manner of which he's ambitious, he's going to want to push for a deep Europa League run. And when you have that kind of desire, it can potentially railroad your league performance. And we're going to be talking about things like where our depth comes into play, how injuries are affecting us. I just feel like we're just not there yet. I think in 2 seasons from now, I think maybe you don't really have an excuse, but you have to look at, if Chelsea actually comes off with all this business and Lampard actually doesn't screw the pooch, Chelsea are a shoo-in for top 4, I think. And then you're looking at, we have 4 other clubs who have really good balanced squads that you're fighting with. Wolves, Leicester, Spurs, United. No one's going to catch Liverpool or City, I don't think. So there's 6 clubs in for 2 spots. I just don't think we're there yet. I would be fine with finishing 5th. That's 3 places above where we finished last season. As long as we're seeing progress in the back, better shape. If we have a reduction in the amount of goals we let up, if we have an increase in the amount of goals we score, if we have that consistency that we saw under Arteta for the majority of when it's come in, that's what I'm looking at. It's not necessarily about having to force ourselves into top 4 in the first full season under Arteta, but you do want to see some semblance of progress. So finishing 5th is that progress. And then you take that 5th place finish and then you build on that one. You don't have to go from point A to point Z in the first year just because the manager has expectations. I think you still have to layer them sensibly. And I think if we got to the semifinals of the Europa League or even the finals and we finished 5th, I wouldn't be sad with that. Especially after the nonsense we've had to go through. Still questions about the squad in certain positions. Still having a young core of players that we don't know how they're going to come off. There's a lot of questions. I would be totally fine with that. So,
I joke around saying it's obviously you couldn't say about it depends on who we sign on, but it is impossible to say where we're going to finish without ultimately seeing what our squad looks like at that October transfer deadline day. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Thank you, boys, for your time. Appreciate it.
No worries at all, man.
Anytime, buddy.
Can I just say as well, Andy, get yourself to the doctor, mate. Your blood pressure is through the roof. Stop eating bacon sandwiches. Go for a run. You're looking too fat. Your blood pressure is mental. That complexion isn't normal, mate.
Andy's going to kill you.
You look like a tomato.
Red. I don't know why. He's been in the sun too long. He's going to take this very personally. Unbelievable stuff. Unbelievable. Let's wrap things up. Thank you ever so much, lads, for coming on, and I'll see you again very, very soon, I'm sure. So that was Drew and Owen. Thank you to the 2 of them for helping me out with this evening's show, and thank you to every one of my guests. We've had Drew, we've had Owen, we've had Lee and Andy and Mike, and I mean the first half an hour. If you want controversy, watching Andy and Lee go at each other was great, and just seeing Andy's red face as well was fantastic. It's been a pleasure to speak to you for the last 90+ minutes. It's been a hell of a show. We've had 7 guests on. John sends his love as well, of course. And we'll be back throughout the season with the guests that you've seen and more people, as well as all the usual stuff. I'm really excited to see what happens with the show this season and what we can muster. It's been a pleasure to speak to all of you, as it always is on every single one of these shows. There's some exciting news around the corner, which I'm absolutely buzzing to share with you when I actually am able to. But other than that, again, members always there supporting the channel. Really appreciate you, and that backing. It enables us to do things over here that we would never usually be able to do if we couldn't. And I'm hoping that this season is one to really look forward to. And you never know, we might see some nice signings being made next week. We might see an Aubameyang signing too. What I'd really appreciate is if you guys could just drop a like on the video. It's been on this room, when you haven't got a window open and when you've got the door closed, I'm sweating like mental in this room. So I'm going to go wash myself off and get ready for the new season. But it's been a pleasure to speak to you, as it always has. And I'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.